Welcome to FireTech Talk. I'm Sean Kelly, and today I'm meeting with Jake Bross, Business Development Manager at Brooks Equipment. We're going to be talking about fire extinguishers for special hazards. Jake, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's just get right to it. Most people are familiar with extinguishers. Hopefully they have one in their home or have one in their kitchen, and they might be familiar with PASS, the PASS acronym that everyone knows. Or maybe, like what's supposed to be done, they receive training at work, so they know how to use those extinguishers. Is there special training needed to be able to use something like a high flow extinguisher or a CO2 extinguisher versus an ABC extinguisher?
It's not incredibly different than all the other extinguishers, and I think the manufacturers are very good about that. They've been very good for the last 50 years. They've been trying to put a consistent product out there so it doesn't create confusion. Because I think they realize, when we go through UL testing for an extinguisher, I think they give them maybe a 40% rating, right? They only look at this from a novice operator. So someone like me who's used extinguishers many times in fire demonstrations and things like that, I may be able to do a lot more with this extinguisher than the average person, because they realize, hey, we're in a panic. I'm gonna take this extinguisher and I'm gonna fumble around with a pin. I'm gonna try to remember some of the training. All this stuff's going through my head, and we've got a live situation. So we got to have the right extinguisher. We got to have it in the right place. And to your point with the special extinguishers, I think the biggest thing is understanding what they can do and what they can't do. It's just as important to not create a false sense of security with extinguishers. Extinguishers are for incipient stage fires, and part of the process and training should be you've notified the fire department already, and they're on their way. And if it's out of control of just a few local operators, then we'll let the pros handle it. So I think that, and the other thing would be range, understanding what 10 feet, 10 pounds, 10 seconds. That's what I always used when I did rule of thumb kind of training on extinguishers. And CO2, you don't have as much range. With high performance units, you have a little bit more, but for the most part, that's kind of that center line. So I think that is important to understand the limits of the extinguisher, so that people don't grab that thing thinking they put this extinguisher here just for my process, and I'm absolutely going to be able to put the fire out. But they definitely have to follow that PASS acronym and notify the fire department as part of the routine.
Okay, yeah, that whole chain of survival still has to be intact.
Absolutely.
Let's bring this all together. So we've talked about different hazards, we've talked about different agents, we've talked about training. One extinguisher designed for a special hazard is a K-class. And this is interesting. This is probably the one most people are familiar with, since every commercial kitchen is required to have one within a certain distance of the cooking operations. Talk us through why a K-class, briefly why a K-class, and then maybe some of the challenges are faced in helping the restaurant employees understand when to use that, when not to use it, or in what order to use it.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover there, because I remember I've been in the business for 28 years, and when I started the business, there was no K-class, right? So it was included in Class B as part of another flammable liquid like paint, tar, gasoline. But NFPA and the cooking industry kind of called that out and said, there's something critical about this. We have to understand it, and we have to kind of make it its own thing. So the K-class chemical is potassium citrate, acetate, or carbonate. It's got to be one of those three, and it actually mirrors the suppression system in the hood. It's the same chemical. So we call that accompaniment, and it has to be that way. Now again, the K-class extinguisher isn't there to meet the minimum A-rated travel distance. So you're always going to have an A-rated extinguisher, by the exit or near maybe behind the bar or in a restaurant or whatnot. But the K-class, yes, they're for the cooking media, and that is it's basically an inorganic salt spray. It kind of reminds me of a bug sprayer when you expel it, and it'll sink into the vegetable oil, and you're thinking about a fryer is the worst case scenario. A faulty heat switch or heat regulator will create that, and that'll sink into the the cooking media and actually foam up and create kind of a foam blanket. But the other half of the extinguishment comes from pulling the pull station on the suppression system. And in NFPA, it says that every K-class that's mounted has to have that sign behind it that says, before you use the extinguisher, pull the pull station on the suppression system. So the suppression system, everybody knows that, okay, there's agents that's going to come out of the pipe and spray on the appliances, but there's so much more going on there. We're going to notify the fire department. We're going to kick off the supply air fans so we're not fanning the flames. We're going to drop a gas valve, whether it's electric or mechanical. We're going to kill the fuel source and the heat source. Otherwise, if you don't do those things, you're going to knock the flame off of that, but it's just going to reflash, and then you're going to be out of agent. So, and then hopefully it isn't out of control to the point where the fire system may or may not be able to control it. So, it's a long answer, but I think it's critical because it's the only scenario where we have complete fire protection in that, a fire alarm makes sound, lets everybody know, to get out of the building. Sprinklers is spraying water literally to no end, and we have an almost unlimited water supply from the city. But this is the only situation we can actually extinguish a flame and cut off the fuel source in just a few simple steps. So it's very important.
Yeah, it's such a primal scenario because it brings together so many important considerations when it comes to fire protection, in that chain of survival. The training is necessary, making sure that the extinguishers you use at the right time and, in the right application, and then walking through how an extinguisher might work in tandem, that accompaniment principle with the kitchen system. So thanks for walking us through that. Well, Jake, thanks for being with us today. And thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe.